Welcome to today's devotional message brought to you by Trusting God Always. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, you took the trembling steps of faith, believing that surely by now the dawn would break. But the sky feels stubbornly gray, and still, silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed. The confirmation that you aren't alone in the quiet ache, the wrestling questions. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort, reminding them that even in the waiting, He is near. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise, or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Your story encourages us all. Let's begin, and let His Word breathe new life into yours. You sit by the window, watching the rain trace paths down the glass, or perhaps the dust motes dance in a shaft of sunlight in a quiet room. Another day stretching out, feeling much like the ones that came before. You planned meticulously, you prayed fervently, you took those difficult, faith-filled steps, genuinely believing that surely by now things would shift, things would be different. The dream you carried would finally begin to be realized. The strained relationship would show signs of healing. The desperately needed provision would arrive. The crushing weight you carry would finally lift. But the silence feels heavy. It's not just the absence of external noise or the quiet of your surroundings. It's the deep, quiet ache within, the unanswered questions echoing in the hidden chambers of your heart. Maybe in a moment of raw honesty, you've whispered into the quiet air, "God, are you even there? Do you even see this pain, this struggle, this impossible situation?" Perhaps you felt profoundly forgotten, like a small, vulnerable boat tossed relentlessly on a vast, indifferent sea, battered by waves of uncertainty and doubt, while other ships, it seems, sail smoothly and effortlessly into calm, safe harbors. This feeling of being adrift, overlooked, or stuck isn't a sign of your failure or lack of faith. And crucially, it is not proof of God's absence. Instead, it is a sacred, painful space, a wilderness journey known intimately by many who have walked closely with God throughout history. Abraham felt it under the vast expanse of the silent stars, waiting years upon years for the promised son, the heir who would carry the weight of nations. Joseph knew the biting cold of its isolation in the depths of a forgotten prison cell, his youthful dreams seemingly shattered, swallowed by betrayal and injustice. David experienced its terrifying pressure while fleeing for his very life from a relentless enemy, hiding in caves, questioning when relief would ever come. Even Jesus, in the agonizing stillness of the Garden of Gethsemane, wrestled with the profound weight of a path that led through suffering before victory. This message is for you, the one who is waiting with a weary heart, wrestling with persistent questions, and wondering if your prayers are merely dissolving into the quiet air. God is not late according to His eternal timeline. He is profoundly present, even in the suffocating silence, and He is working in ways you cannot yet see, moving pieces you cannot perceive, orchestrating moments you cannot anticipate. Let's journey together to explore the deep, foundational truth of trusting God's timing, even when every fiber of your being cries out in desperate longing, "How long, O Lord? How long?" This journey isn't about manufacturing easy answers or forcing outcomes through sheer will, but about finding His abiding peace and discovering His profound purpose within the wait itself. Sometimes the space of God's apparent absence is where His most profound, unseen presence is at work, shaping us in ways we couldn't imagine in the noise. Welcome to today's devotional message from Trusting God Always. You've been walking this path, haven't you? The one marked by questions and hushed prayers in the quiet of the night. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still silence. Or perhaps not silence, but answers that looked nothing like what you expected, leaving you bewildered and maybe a little bit bruised. You feel the weight of the world pressing down, the anxieties about tomorrow, the sting of past rejections, the gnawing doubt that maybe, just maybe, God isn't as for you as you desperately need Him to be. You wonder if your faith is strong enough, if your prayers reached past the ceiling, if the promises you clung to were just whispers in the wind. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed, a gentle reminder that even in the wilderness seasons, God is present and His truth stands unshaken. We talk a lot about faith, about belief, about holding on. But what happens when the storm rages so fiercely you can barely remember what the sun looked like? When the mustard seed of faith feels crushed under the weight of circumstance? When the oil in your lamp seems to be running out just as the night is at its darkest? This is the raw, unedited reality of the walk. It's not always mountaintop views and clear skies. Often, it's the slow, arduous climb through the valley of the shadow, where trusting God feels less like a triumphant declaration and more like a desperate, whispered plea. It's in these spaces that God does His deepest, most transformative work. He meets you not where you wish you were, but exactly where you are, tired, uncertain, wrestling with the gap between His word and your world. He doesn't ask for a perfect performance. He asks for a yielded heart. He isn't looking for your manufactured strength. He's waiting for your gentle surrender. It's a paradox, isn't it? You feel weakest, and yet that's precisely when His strength finds its most radiant expression within you. You feel most lost, and yet it is in that very disorientation that He guides you to a path you could never have found on your own. This journey of trusting God always isn't about having all the answers or understanding every twist and turn. It's about choosing to believe in the goodness and faithfulness of the author, even when the chapter you're in makes no sense. It's about finding peace, not in the absence of storms, but in the presence of the one who calms them, or who carries you through them. It's about recognizing that sometimes God's answers are not renovations of our current life, but entirely new blueprints we couldn't have imagined. Sometimes the breakthrough isn't the removal of the obstacle, but the strength to climb over it, discovering a new landscape on the other side. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort and the assurance that they are not alone in their journey of faith. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise, or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's build a community of hope in the comments. As we lean in today, remember that God's truth is not just a historical record. It's a living, breathing reality designed to intersect with your present moment, with your specific struggles, with your deepest fears. Let's allow His timeless word to speak into our temporary circumstances, transforming our perspective, renewing our hope, and anchoring our trust. Let's begin, and let His word breathe new life into yours. Think of Abraham and Sarah. You picture them, perhaps under that vast ancient sky, the stars a glittering, countless host above them. God gave them a magnificent promise, descendants as numerous as those very stars, a nation that would bless the world. Imagine Abraham, his heart swelling with faith, looking up at that celestial tapestry, the vision breathtakingly clear. The promise was sure, the future painted in vivid divine hues. But then came the pause. You feel the weight of it, the long, drawn-out silence that followed the thunderclap of God's word. Years turned into decades. They waited and waited. Their bodies aged, time etching lines of weary resignation onto their faces. Sarah's womb remained stubbornly, painfully empty. The reality of their circumstance screamed louder than the whispered promise from God. You can almost hear it. The taunts of barrenness, the ticking clock of their aging bodies, the practical impossibility of it all. How could this be? Where was the fulfillment? It's easy for us, looking back from centuries away, knowing the end of their story, to see God's perfect plan unfold. We know Isaac is coming. We know the lineage will continue. But try to step into their shoes in that moment. Try to feel the confusion, the doubt, creeping in like a cold shadow. The painful, stark contrast between the divine word they held onto and the harsh, earthly reality they woke up to every single day. This is the spiritual insight that resonates deep within their narrative, and one that mirrors so many of our own journeys. God's promises often come with periods of profound waiting, seasons of uncomfortable, faith-stretching pause. The pause isn't a cancellation of the promise. It's not God forgetting you or changing his mind. It is, paradoxically, part of the process itself. This delay is designed not to torment, but to test, to refine, to strip away our reliance on human timing and strength, and ultimately, to deepen our faith in the one who is sovereign over time itself. It's in the waiting that the roots of our trust grow stronger, pushing deeper into the bedrock of his character. You sit in the silence, perhaps, wondering if your prayer was even heard. The wind taps the window, like God's whisper, waiting for your stillness to be heard above the clamor of your fears. You hold a promise from Scripture, a word from God, a vision he placed in your heart, but your current reality seems to be a cruel contradiction. Your health doesn't improve. Your relationship doesn't mend. The provision hasn't arrived. The door hasn't opened. Every day, the circumstances seem to shout, "Impossible," just as loudly as Sarah's aging body must have. Yet, the encouragement from their story, echoed powerfully in Hebrews 11:11, is this: by faith, Abraham, even though he was past age and Sarah herself was barren, was enabled to become a father because he considered him faithful who had made the promise. And in other translations regarding Sarah, by faith, Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Through faith, they received strength to conceive, even beyond the age, even when barren. Their faith wasn't just belief in the promise. It was belief in the faithfulness of the one who made the promise, even when all external evidence suggested otherwise. God's timing may stretch our human understanding, pushing us far beyond our comfort zones, forcing us to confront the limits of our own control. But his promise remains sure, anchored in his unchanging character, not in the shifting sands of our circumstances. When your reality seems to contradict God's promise, when the pause feels endless and the silence deafening. Remember Abraham and Sarah. They held fast to the promise, not because they saw the baby in their arms, but because they trusted the promiser, even in the heart of the pause. And in that holding on, strength was received, and impossibility became a testimony to his power. And so we slow our pace now. We shift from the narrative of Abraham and Sarah, from the wrestling of the pause, to a quiet reflection on the timeless truth that undergirds it all. There is one truth that echoes through every story of faith, every answered prayer, every promise kept across the span of history. God is profoundly, absolutely, unfailingly faithful. His love is not conditional on your performance, your patience, or even your understanding. It simply is. Like a river flowing from an eternal source, His faithfulness nourishes the driest ground, bringing life where there was only barrenness. To walk in trust, not by sight, is perhaps the most challenging, yet most liberating invitation of the spiritual journey. It means looking at the storm and seeing not just the fury of the waves, but the quiet figure walking on them. It means facing the closed door and believing in the unseen hand that holds the master key. It means planting that mustard seed of faith in seemingly impossible soil, confident that growth is not dependent on your effort, but on the miraculous, life-giving power of the gardener. It is the surrender of the map, choosing instead to walk hand in hand with the one who knows the territory perfectly, even through the valleys and wildernesses we cannot see beyond. God has a sacred way of turning hidden seasons, the quiet waiting, the painful pruning, the seemingly unproductive pauses, into holy stories. The time you felt forgotten becomes the backdrop for a powerful display of His remembrance. The season of lack becomes the canvas for His abundant provision. The moment you thought hope was lost becomes the turning point where His unexpected grace flooded in. He is the master storyteller, weaving together the threads of your doubts, your fears, your tears, and your halting steps of faith into a tapestry of redemption and unwavering love. Your hidden season is not a wasted chapter. It is being transformed into a testament to His enduring faithfulness, a chapter that will speak life and hope to others who find themselves in their own pause. They didn't see the end. Abraham didn't see the nation. Sarah didn't see the generations that would flow from her. But they trusted the author, and that was enough. The long wait stretches before you, a desolate wilderness under an unchanging sky. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months, perhaps even years, since the promise whispered like a seed planted in dry earth. You prayed, you fasted, you believed, but the silence persists, and in that silence, a new, unsettling urge begins to stir. The powerful impulse to do something, to fix it yourself, to lend God a hand. You know the story. Abraham and Sarah, standing on the edge of impossibility, weary from decades of waiting for the promised heir. God's word was clear, specific, yet the reality of Sarah's barrenness felt insurmountable. The pressure mounted, the hope dwindled, replaced by a practical human logic. How can God fulfill this if we do nothing? And so, in a moment born not of divine guidance, but of human anxiety and impatience, they concocted a plan. Sarah offered Hagar, her servant, to Abraham. It was a workaround, a cultural norm, a seemingly logical step to hurry the promise along. From this union came Ishmael. A son was born. On the surface, a fulfillment. Yet we know the tangled, painful history that followed, a consequence of stepping outside God's specific plan and timing. It might have felt like helping God, like being proactive, but it was rooted in a fear that God wouldn't or couldn't act in His unique way. This ancient scene echoes in our modern hearts. How often do we stand in that same wilderness of waiting, feeling the pressure of the unfulfilled promise? Whether it's for healing, a spouse, a new direction, financial provision, or the transformation of a loved one. When God seems slow, the urge to step in becomes almost overwhelming. We feel compelled to manipulate circumstances, push doors open that aren't meant to yield, force conversations, or settle for something less than God's best, a counterfeit peace, a compromised path, just so it feels like something is happening. We chase the mirage of control across the desert of our impatience, often creating complications and heartache down the road. The profound spiritual insight here is discerning the fragile line between actively pursuing God's clearly revealed will through obedience and anxiously trying to control the outcome or create a shortcut born of our own wisdom and fear. It's the difference between planting the mustard seed in faith and trying to yank it out of the ground every hour to check for growth. Our impatience, our lack of trust in His perfect timing, can steer us down paths that, while seemingly productive or practical in the moment, ultimately don't align with God's perfect plan. Sometimes, the most active thing you can do is be still. The ancient wisdom found in Psalm 37, verse 7, whispers across the centuries, "Be still before the Lord, and wait patiently for Him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices." Trusting God's timing requires a conscious, moment-by-moment surrender of our perceived control. It means resisting the desperate urge to fix things in our own limited strength or flawed wisdom, and instead finding rest in His boundless sovereignty, even when the silence is deafening and the waiting feels eternal. The silence wraps around you like a heavy cloak. You've poured out your heart, maybe pleaded, maybe just whispered a desperate prayer into the quiet room. And the echo is the only answer you hear. It feels like standing before a locked door, knocking gently at first, then with more urgency, only to be met by impenetrable stillness. You sit in the quiet, wondering if your prayer was even heard. The wind taps the window, like God's whisper waiting for your stillness. Is He there? Does He care? Think of David, a young man anointed by a prophet, marked for greatness, yet his life became a desperate flight through the wilderness. He wasn't sitting on a throne. He was hiding in caves, running from a king consumed by jealousy and rage. Years stretched on, each day a test of survival, a stark contrast to the glorious future he'd been promised. You can almost hear his cries echoing off the cavern walls, captured forever in the Psalms. "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" Psalm 13, 1. It's the cry of a heart aching in the perceived absence of God, a soul wrestling with divine silence in the face of immense suffering and injustice. There are seasons, deeply personal valleys, when God seems to go utterly silent. You seek His face with every fiber of your being. You listen with an intensity that strains your spiritual ears. You search the Scriptures for a direct word, but hear nothing. It feels like abandonment, like the divine compass has stopped spinning, leaving you adrift in the fog of uncertainty. This silence is not the absence of God. Sometimes it is the very presence of His refining fire, This is the profound spiritual insight often hidden in the quiet. God's silence is not necessarily his absence or disapproval. He has not forgotten you, nor is he hiding his face in displeasure. Sometimes, the most profound, transformative work he does in us occurs precisely in these quiet, unseen places. It's in the waiting, in the lack of clear direction, in the forced stillness, that he shapes your character like a potter working the clay in the quiet corner of the studio. He builds a resilience within you that couldn't be forged in the sunlight of clear answers. He teaches you to depend utterly, nakedly on him, not on the comfort of audible answers or clearly marked paths. It's a paradox. The deepest faith learns to thrive not on what it hears or sees, but on the unchanging character of the one who holds the silence itself. It is a surrender that finds strength in stillness, a hope that burns brightest in the darkness. The call to reflection echoes from an ancient heart that also knew the weight of waiting. For God alone, O my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him. Psalm 62:5. In the silence, when every instinct screams to strive, to seek noise, to manufacture answers, learn to wait on him. Find your hope not in the resolution of your problem, not in the breaking of the silence, but in the unwavering, unchanging, always present God who holds you even when you cannot hear his voice. He is working deeply and powerfully in the hidden spaces of your heart. Trust the work he is doing in the quiet. You sit in the quiet space of waiting, maybe nestled in a valley you never chose to enter. Days bleed into weeks, weeks into months, and the promise you cling to feels distant, a mirage shimmering on a horizon that refuses to get closer. Doubt taps a rhythm against your heart. Did I hear God right? Was that really his voice? You feel overlooked, perhaps even betrayed by circumstance or people, much like a young man named Joseph did long ago. He was favored, gifted, dreaming prophetic dreams of harvest and heavens bowing down. Can you imagine the joy, the certainty in those moments? But the path God laid out wasn't straight or easy. It plunged into darkness. His brothers, green with jealousy, cast him into a pit, then sold him into the brutal anonymity of slavery. The world he knew dissolved. Then came the false accusation from Potiphar's wife, a lie that stole his freedom and sealed him in the stone walls of a prison for years. Pit, slavery, prison. These were not scenes from the vibrant dreams he'd been given. This felt like abandonment, like God had forgotten the promises whispered in the quiet of his youth. Yet, the ancient text offers a profound paradox within this suffering. The Lord was with Joseph. Genesis 39:2-21. Not just when he was favored at home, but in the pit, in the slave market, in the prison cell. His waiting wasn't empty time. It was a crucible, a refining fire. Slavery wasn't just servitude. It was God's unexpected university, teaching him the intricacies of administration, management, and resilience under pressure. Prison wasn't merely confinement. It was where he honed his gifts of discernment and interpretation, connecting him to the very people who would eventually pave his way to Pharaoh's court. In the darkest, most unlikely places, God was preparing him. This spiritual insight echoes through time, a truth for your own waiting season. Often, the time you feel most stuck, most unseen, is God's intense training ground. The impurities of self-reliance, impatience, or fear are being burned away. Strength you didn't know you possessed is being forged in the heat of pressure. Wisdom, deep and true, is being hammered out on the anvil of endurance. The Apostle Peter reminds us that trials, which waiting often feels like, come precisely for this reason, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor. 1 Peter 1:6-7. Your faith, currently being tested in the quiet or chaotic waiting, is becoming more precious than any earthly treasure. It is being refined, not for its destruction, but for its revelation. Embrace this refining fire. Trust that even in the stillness, in the struggle, God is intensely, lovingly, and purposefully at work, preparing you for the fulfillment of His promise, shaping you into the person who can carry the weight of the blessing when it finally arrives. He hasn't forgotten. He's refining. You've sat in the silence, maybe for weeks, months, maybe even years. The calendar pages turn, the seasons shift, but the circumstance that holds your breath remains stubbornly unchanged. You feel the dull ache of stagnation, the quiet fear that perhaps God has forgotten this place, this need, this heart that cries out in the waiting. The prayer you whisper now is tinged with a different kind of hope, not for the answer you initially sought, but for the strength to endure the silence itself. Is this pause just emptiness, a void where nothing is happening? Or is something profound being built within the stillness, something your human eyes cannot yet perceive? The ancient scriptures speak directly to this season, not as a punishment or neglect, but as a divine workshop. James, the brother of Jesus, paints a vivid picture in James 1:3-4. Knowing that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Your wait is not barren ground. It is fertile soil where the deepest roots of your faith are taking hold. It's a crucible where impurities of self-reliance are burned away, leaving behind the pure gold of dependence on God alone. Patience isn't just a virtue, it's a spiritual muscle, forged in the fires of delayed desire and stretched in the tension of unanswered questions. You cannot gain this strength through comfort or immediate gratification. It is the wilderness that teaches you to rely on manna, the storm that forces you to anchor in Him, the seemingly dead seed that proves life exists beneath the surface, waiting for its appointed time. This season builds a resilience that mere knowledge cannot impart. You are learning to trust the voice you cannot see, to hope when the natural light fails, to surrender the reins of control that were never truly yours to begin with. It is here, in the quiet, uncomfortable space of the wait, that you discover your sufficiency is found not in the fulfillment of your desires, but in the inexhaustible presence of Christ. The spiritual insight that echoes through the ages is this: the process of waiting is as essential, perhaps even more so, than the outcome you crave. God isn't solely focused on what He will eventually give you, but on who you are becoming in the journey of receiving. The Apostle Paul echoes this truth in Romans 5:3-5, revealing the divine architecture of transformation. We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame. Because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit. Your specific weight, with its unique set of challenges and heartaches, is building something invaluable within you. A character refined, a hope anchored, a love overflowing, a steadfastness that reflects the enduring nature of God Himself. Don't despise the waiting room. It is often where the deepest healing and the most profound transformation occur. Lean into the divine sculpting. Trust the hammer and the chisel in the master's hand. The mundane weights heavy. You wake to the same walls, face the same challenges, perform the same tasks that feel less like stepping stones and more like stones holding you in place. You are faithful. You show up. You pray. You try your best to live right in the quiet corners of your life. And still, the horizon seems distant, the promises like whispers carried away by the wind of reality. You wonder if your small, ordinary efforts are even seen, if your current field of struggle or waiting is just that, a field of survival with no larger purpose. Think of a woman named Ruth. Her world had shattered. Loss had stripped her bare, a young widow, a foreigner, leaving everything familiar behind to follow her mother-in-law, Naomi, into a land that was not her own. Their future seemed painted in shades of gray, destitute, without support, with no visible plan beyond sheer loyalty and a desperate hope in Naomi's God. How bleak that road must have felt, step after uncertain step away from Moab. Arriving in Bethlehem, their immediate reality was harsh. Survival meant manual labor, the work of the poor and the vulnerable. Ruth's plan was simple, born of necessity and dignity. She would go out to glean grain in the fields behind the harvesters, gathering the leftovers so she and Naomi could eat. A monotonous, back-breaking task under the sun, an act of simple obedience, of day-to-day survival. She had no idea whose field she was walking into that day. This is where the invisible work begins. Ruth was simply trying to live, to be faithful in the most basic, humbling task of survival. She was gleaning in a field, an utterly ordinary act in her life, driven by immediate need. But this wasn't just any field. It belonged to Boaz, a man of integrity, a man of means, a kinsman redeemer, a man whom God had prepared. Ruth didn't know Boaz existed. She didn't know the laws of Israel concerning kinsman redeemers. She didn't know the lineage of Christ would one day trace through her. All she knew was the feel of straw in her hands and the ache in her back. Yet while she was focused on the small, visible task before her, God was orchestrating a divine appointment. He saw her quiet faithfulness in the wilderness of her grief and uncertainty. He was connecting threads she couldn't even perceive, leading her to the one who would redeem her future. Her simple obedience in the mundane was the very path God used to rewrite her story entirely. This is the profound, often unseen truth for you today. While you are navigating your own field of waiting, doing the quiet, sometimes tiresome work of showing up, staying faithful, simply enduring, God is working. He is not distant. He is deeply involved in the details you can't see. He is arranging circumstances, positioning people, opening doors, aligning timelines. Your current reality, which may feel like mere survival, is part of His intricate, benevolent design. The small, often invisible acts of faith you perform daily are seen and valued by a God who holds your future in His hands. He knows the plans He has for you, says the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29:11. Your season of gleaning is not forgotten. It is the ground where His invisible hand is preparing your harvest. Keep trusting. Keep being faithful in the small things. God is working behind the veil, weaving your story into something far grander than you can imagine right now. You lie awake in the hush of the night, the clock ticking a rhythm you can't keep pace with. Your stomach churns, a knot tightening with every thought that whispers, "What if?" The silence that once felt sacred, where you brought your deepest longings to God, now feels empty, perhaps even mocking. The scene is within you, a quiet, internal battlefield where hope and anxiety wrestle under the cover of darkness. You replay conversations, dissect past prayers, analyzing every sign for authenticity. Did I really hear God's voice? Was that promise I clung to merely an echo of my own desperate desires, wishful thinking masquerading as divine assurance? This is the raw, unedited landscape of waiting, especially when the path ahead is shrouded in mist. Fear creeps in like a thief in the night. What if this never happens? What if I've poured my life, my energy, my deepest hopes into something that was never meant to be? What if I've wasted precious years waiting on a word that wasn't spoken? These questions aren't abstract theological debates. They are the sharp edges of your reality, pressing into the tender places of your heart. They are the storm clouds gathering over the mustard seed faith you tried to plant. Let's be honest with ourselves, just as the psalmists were honest before God. Acknowledging this wrestling, this churning fear, this gut-wrenching doubt, it isn't a sign of weak faith. It is, perhaps, a testament to the depth of your desire and the authenticity of your human experience. The Bible doesn't paint a picture of saints who glide effortlessly through life on waves of perfect serenity. It shows men and women who cried out from valleys, who wrestled with angels, who questioned God's timing and methods, yet continued to stumble forward in trust. And here is the profound, quiet truth. God is not intimidated by your doubt. He is not shocked by your fear. He does not turn away when you lay bare the trembling landscape of your soul. He meets you precisely there, in the eye of your internal storm. He invites you, like the psalmists, to pour out your heart, not withholding the messy, the unsure, the terrified parts. He can handle it. The seemingly contradictory truth is that sometimes, in surrendering your struggle to Him, you find the strength to stand. His word is not a platitude designed for moments of ease, but a lifeline thrown into the deepest waters of your fear. Isaiah 41:10 whispers directly into this battlefield. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. He is not just near, He is with you. He is not just present, He is for you. His righteous right hand, the hand of power, justice, and promise, is not pushing you away, but upholding you. Bring your doubts and fears, the questions that keep you awake, the what-ifs that haunt your steps, and lay them at the foot of the cross. He doesn't demand you silence them. He asks you to trust Him with them. He will strengthen the weary legs, help the faltering heart, and uphold you when you feel yourself sinking. Trusting God always doesn't mean you won't feel doubt or fear. It means you choose to bring those very feelings to the one who holds you fast, even when your own grip loosens. The wind whispers a different tune tonight, not the melody of arrival, but the low hum of enduring. You've been holding on to a promise, haven't you? Maybe it was a word spoken directly to your heart, a divine nudge towards a promised land only God could envision for you. Or perhaps it's the larger, overarching promise of His presence, His provision, His perfect peace that He guarantees to those who simply place their weight upon Him. The weight stretches out, a vast, unyielding landscape, and the sheer distance between where you are and where the promise seems to reside feels insurmountable. Doubt, like fine sand, begins to gather at the edges of your resolve. Did I hear correctly? Is He still there? Think of the Israelites. 40 years they journeyed in the wilderness. The promised land wasn't 40 years away by geographic measure, but by the measure of their wavering hearts. They had the promise, the land flowing with milk and honey, their inheritance. But the harsh reality of the desert, the thirst, the hunger, the giants in the land ahead, gnawed at their faith. Their story stands as a stark, sun-bleached monument to the peril of letting the difficulty of the journey erode belief in the destination. The wilderness became less a path to the promise and more a consequence of their unbelief in the promise giver. It is a sobering reminder. The wilderness can blur the vision, make the promise seem a mirage, but God's truth remains an unshifting bedrock beneath the shifting sands. Your soul needs an anchor in this season, a lifeline cast out into the storm of uncertainty. That lifeline is God's unchanging promises in His Word. His Word isn't just ancient text. It is living breath, filled with the history of His faithfulness. It reminds you who He is, not a fickle deity, but the one whose character is steadfast love, whose power is infinite, whose plans are for your welfare. It recounts His unwavering commitment through every generation, through every trial faced by His people. Hebrews 10:23 is a direct command, a clarion call to your weary spirit. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for He who promised is faithful. It doesn't say hold fast because the promise feels close, or hold fast when the journey is easy. It says hold fast, period, because He is faithful. In the quiet moments, when the silence presses in and the promise feels furthest away, open His Word. Let the promises leap off the page and anchor themselves deep within your soul. Cling to them as a drowning person clings to a life raft. Write them down. See them with your eyes. Make them tangible. Speak them out loud. Let your own ears hear the truth above the clamor of your fears. Let His promises be the compass that guides you through the disorientation of the weight, pointing always back to the certainty of His character, the surety of His love. The wilderness is real, yes, but the one who promised is more real, and He is utterly, beautifully, powerfully faithful. The coffee brews in the quiet kitchen, the morning light a soft gray against the window pane. You move through the familiar motions, packing lunches, answering emails, showing up for the routine that feels both necessary and small. Inside, a bigger prayer echoes, a larger hope awaits fulfillment. And there's this subtle ache, a whisper of doubt. Does any of this small stuff even matter? Am I just treading water while waiting for God to finally move the mountain? It's easy to feel overlooked in the quiet corners, doing the tasks no one applauds, serving in ways that feel invisible. You attend the meetings, change the diapers, send the difficult email, smile when you feel weary, all seemingly disconnected from the grand promise you're holding on to. This waiting feels less like preparation and more like a pause button pressed on your destiny. But Jesus, the master builder, told a story not about those who received much, but about those who were faithful with little while the master was away. Matthew 25:14-30. The servants given just 1 or 2 talents were rewarded for doubling even that small amount. Their faithfulness wasn't measured by the size of the initial gift, but by their diligence in the waiting. The profound insight here is that God isn't primarily assessing how you handle the abundance when it arrives. He is intimately watching how you handle the waiting, the mundane, the small entrusted to you right now. Faithfulness in the small, often unseen tasks of today is not a delay in your journey. It is the sacred ground where character is built, stewardship is learned, and readiness is proven. It's in the daily choice to show up, to serve, to do the right thing even when it feels insignificant, that God prepares you for greater responsibilities tomorrow. Think of it. A small stream, faithful in its flow, eventually carves canyons. A tiny mustard seed, faithfully planted, grows into a sheltering tree. The biblical wisdom is astonishingly clear and often overlooked in our pursuit of the big moment. One who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. Luke 16:10. Your faithfulness in the very little is not just a test, it's the training ground. It's a quiet act of worship, acknowledging that all He gives, no matter how small it seems, is worthy of your diligence and trust. Don't despise the smallness of your current season, the gentle rhythm of routine, the hidden acts of service. Instead, choose to be faithful right where God has you. There is a quiet strength forged in these moments, a deep root system growing unseen, preparing you for the storms and the fruitful seasons ahead. Trust that the hands faithful with a little are the hands God is preparing to hold much. There is paradox here. The waiting that feels like emptiness is often the fullest season of growth. The tasks that feel insignificant are building your very foundation. The unseen work is the most deeply seen by God. So breathe deep. See the holy in the humble. Be faithful in the small. It is preparing you for everything else. The familiar anxiety tightens its grip, a quiet vice around your chest. It whispers of futures unknown, fraught with what-ifs and potential disappointments. Or perhaps it drags you back to yesterdays, replaying mistakes, echoing regrets you can't silence. You are here, sitting in this moment, breathing this air, yet your spirit feels pulled taut between a past you cannot change and a future you cannot control. In this tension, you miss it, the subtle whisper of grace, a quiet beauty of the present instant, the tangible presence of God, right here, right now. Think of the journey through the wilderness. A people delivered from crushing bondage, walking towards a promised land flowing with milk and honey. Yet, their eyes were rarely fixed on the daily miracle. They longed for the meager comforts of Egypt, the onions, the garlic, the familiar slavery, the past they couldn't change, or they grumbled about the giants in the land ahead, the uncertain battles, the challenges they couldn't yet face, the future they couldn't control. And in their focus on the past and future, they missed the daily manna, the literal bread from heaven that sustained them each day. They missed the pillar of cloud by day and fire by night, the visible, tangible presence of God leading them in that very moment. They were so preoccupied with what was lost or what was feared that they overlooked the divine provision and presence right before their eyes. They were waiting for a destination, while neglecting the sacredness of the journey itself, the holiness woven into the now. The profound spiritual insight whispered across millennia is this: God gives grace and sustenance specifically for this day. His strength is made perfect not for next week's trial, but for today's struggle. His peace isn't reserved for the end result, but offered freely in the midst of the wait. Jesus, in teaching us how to approach the Father, gave us a prayer that anchors us firmly in the present. Give us this day our daily bread. Matthew 6:11. Not weekly reserves, not yearly provisions, but the sustenance needed for this singular, irreplaceable 24 hours. It's a rhythm of dependence, a gentle reminder that we are called to trust for today, to lean into His provision one breath, one step, one moment at a time. Peace in the waiting isn't about seeing the finish line. It's about finding His hand in the present step. Sometimes, the greatest peace is found not in fixing the problem, but in resting in the provisioner. Finding peace in the waiting, then, becomes an active centering of your soul in God's provision and presence right now. It is a conscious choice to pull your racing thoughts back from the what-ifs and if-onlys and anchor them in the what is, the truth of God's presence surrounding you in this instant. It is a practice of gratitude for the present blessings, no matter how small they seem, amidst the large looming uncertainties. The sunlight streaming through the window, the simple comfort of a warm drink, the quiet rhythm of your own breath, the unwavering truth of His love, whispered in Scripture. These are manna for today, if you choose to see them. The biblical encouragement from Philippians 4:6-7 is not just a nice verse. It is a powerful, actionable invitation to step out of the torrent of anxiety and onto the solid ground of His peace. Do not be anxious about anything, it begins, a direct challenge to the mind that races between past and future. But it doesn't leave you hanging in that difficult space. It provides the pathway, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Everything, every worry about the future, every regret about the past, every uncertainty of the present moment, bring it all to Him, and bring it with thanksgiving. This is key. Even in the midst of uncertainty, find something, anything, to be thankful for in the present moment. This act of gratitude shifts your focus from scarcity to sufficiency, from what you lack to the grace already given. And the result? And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This isn't a peace that comes from the absence of problems. It's a peace that stands sentinel within the storm. It is a peace that makes no logical sense to the world because it is not dependent on circumstances. It is dependent on His presence. It is a peace that actively guards your most vulnerable places, your heart, where fears reside, and your mind, where anxieties breed. Choose in this moment to breathe deep. Feel your feet on the ground. Look around you. What is real now? Where is God now? Practice gratitude for the simple gifts of this day. Offer a prayer, laying down the burden of controlling what you cannot, and asking for grace for this day. Trust that the same God who fed the Israelites daily, who taught His disciples to ask for daily bread, is more than capable of meeting you, sustaining you, and filling you with His peace in the present moment of your waiting. His presence makes the wait holy. The calendar pages turn, marked with hopeful dates that have long since passed. You look at the place in your life that feels like it's stuck, frozen in time, while everything and everyone else seems to be moving forward. The prayer whispered months or maybe even years ago hangs in the air, seemingly unheard, unanswered. You've walked faithfully. You've prayed diligently. You've tried to do all the right things, but the unfolding of your story feels delayed, perhaps even forgotten. The questions swirl. Did I miss something? Was my faith not strong enough? Am I somehow unworthy of this breakthrough, this healing, this provision, this answer? This feeling of being out of sync with the divine clock is heavy, a quiet burden carried in the heart's hidden chambers. From our vantage point, nestled within the constraints of time and limited perspective, God's timing often makes no sense. We stand at the edge of a vast tapestry, seeing only a single thread, perhaps a tangled knot, or a color that seems out of place. We judge the beauty and purpose of the entire design based on this tiny, incomplete fragment. But God, He stands above the whole, seeing every thread, every color, every knot and curve, from the initial stitch to the final, complete masterpiece. He sees the end from the beginning, the intricate connections we cannot fathom, the future implications of present delays. It is incredibly difficult, almost impossibly so, to reconcile His perfect timing with our urgent human needs. We crave instant relief, immediate answers, swift progress. We measure time in minutes, hours, days. God measures it in seasons, generations, the unfolding of eternal purposes. His delays are not signs of indifference or worse, rejection. A delayed answer is not a denied promise. Sometimes, the pause is the most powerful part of the song, preparing the way for a crescendo we couldn't have orchestrated ourselves. The seed buried in dark earth feels forgotten, but it is in that hidden waiting that the miracle of life is quietly forming. Think of the wilderness wanderings. 40 years felt like an agonizing delay for a journey that should have taken mere days. Was it a denial of the promised land? No, it was a necessary season, a crucible of waiting that forged a generation, teaching them dependence on manna from heaven, shaping their identity, and preparing them for the battles to come. From their perspective, it was a brutal, confusing detour. From God's, a vital part of the divine plan, a necessary shaping before entering the fullness of the promise. The truth is, His timing is not a reflection of your worthiness or the strength of your faith. The universe does not operate on your personal calendar or as a reward system based on your performance. His timing aligns with far grander, higher purposes than we can grasp. As the prophet Isaiah reveals in those profound verses, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." Isaiah 55, 8-9. This isn't a dismissive shrug from a distant deity. It's an invitation to humility and trust. It's an acknowledgement that His wisdom encompasses dimensions we cannot see. His thoughts are higher because they account for factors we are utterly unaware of. The hearts of others involved, the global impact, the precise moment when circumstances are ripe for the promise to bear the most fruit, the character He is building in you during the wait. His ways are higher because they are perfect, untainted by human error, limited knowledge, or self-interest. He sees the ripple effects of every action, the unintended consequences we might create with our impatient striving. He knows the perfect moment when His intervention will align not only with your good, but with the good of His kingdom, the glorification of His name, and the ultimate unfolding of His redemptive plan for all creation. Sometimes, the waiting protects you from something you cannot see. Sometimes, the delay is preparing the ground, both around you and within you, for the blessing to take root and thrive. The spiritual insight here is deeply challenging, deeply freeing. It is about surrendering our limited timeline to His infinite one. It's releasing the white-knuckled grip on how and when we believe things should happen, and opening our hands in trust to the one who holds all time in His palms. This surrender is not passive resignation, it is active faith. It is choosing to believe that the artist knows precisely when to add the next stroke to the canvas, even when we are impatient to see the finished work. This calls us to a quiet, resolute posture rooted in the ancient wisdom of Psalm 27:14. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. Notice the repetition, the double imperative to wait. It's not a gentle suggestion, it's a command, because waiting in faith is a spiritual discipline. It requires strength to quiet the anxious voice of doubt, strength to resist the urge to take matters into our own hands in ways that contradict His will. It requires courage to remain hopeful when hope feels foolish, courage to trust when the evidence seems contrary, courage to believe that God is working even in the silence. His timing is worth waiting for, even when it makes no sense to your immediate circumstances, your aching heart, or your logical mind. The valleys feel long and dark. The wilderness stretches out endlessly. The storm rages without sign of ceasing. But His perspective encompasses the mountain peaks beyond the valley, the fertile land beyond the wilderness, the calm that follows the storm, and the rainbow that signifies His covenant faithfulness. Trust the one whose perspective is perfect. Trust the one who sees the completed tapestry. Trust the one whose love for you is woven into every thread, every delay, every unfolding moment of your life story. He is not slow. He is sovereign. He is not delaying. He is designing. And the masterpiece He is creating, both in your life and through your waiting, is more beautiful and purposeful than you could ever ask or imagine. The shears slice clean and sharp through the air, then through the branch you thought was doing so well. It's unexpected, painful even. You look at the cut, the part that's now gone, and a question forms in the quiet ache. Why? You've been faithful. You've been striving, you've been trying to grow, and this is the response? A cutting away? It feels like loss, like a sudden halt to progress, like the gardener himself has misunderstood your flourishing, or perhaps your desperate need for visible progress. This season, this waiting, this unexpected stripping back of things you held dear, or routines you relied on, or even strengths you thought were essential. It mirrors the shock of the pruned branch. You feel exposed, less than whole, wondering what fruit could possibly come from something diminished. The wind carries whispers of doubt. Was I not good enough? Is this punishment? You see the gardener kneeling among the vines. His hand is steady, his gaze knowledgeable. He doesn't prune carelessly. Every snip is deliberate, guided by ancient wisdom only He possesses. From the branch's perspective, it's just the harsh steel, the sudden severance. But the gardener sees the whole vineyard, the coming seasons, the potential for more than the branch currently holds. He knows that unchecked growth can lead to weaker fruit, that energy needs redirecting, that certain parts must be removed to allow others to thrive, to open the center to light and air, to prepare for the heavier, sweeter clusters that will hang in due season. This pruning, which feels like taking away, is actually a divine making space for deeper roots, for stronger growth, for a yield that surpasses anything the unpruned branch could ever produce. It's a paradox held in his gentle yet firm hand. Less becomes the path to more. The stripping back is the setup for abundance. Remember the words spoken among the vines, echoed through centuries. Every branch that does bear fruit he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. John 15:2. This isn't pruning because you failed. It's pruning because you bear fruit, because you have potential for greater fruitfulness. It's an invitation into a deeper work. The seasons of waiting, the times when nothing seems to be happening above ground, when you feel cut back or held still, these are often the times the roots are going deepest, anchoring you against future storms, drawing strength from the unseen depths. The gardener is working in the dark, cultivating resilience, preparing the hidden parts of you for the light and demands of a future harvest. It's a quiet, invisible strengthening that feels like stagnation but is essential preparation. You are not forgotten in the waiting. You are being meticulously tended. Perhaps the waiting has felt like a wilderness, arid, empty, devoid of the expected signs of life. Or maybe it feels like the quiet of the tomb before resurrection, silent, sealed, final. But the gardener knows the cycle of life. He knows that some of the most vital work happens in the darkness, unseen and often misunderstood. He isn't indifferent to your discomfort or confusion. His hand, though it prunes, is also the hand that nourishes, that waters, that protects. He is cultivating patience in you, perseverance, and a trust that isn't dependent on immediate visible results. He is teaching you to rely not on the strength of your branches, but on the life flowing from the vine himself. This season of feeling pruned, of experiencing waiting or loss, is not a detour from your purpose. It is integral to your purpose. It is God preparing you, refining you, setting you up for a richer expression of His life through you. It requires a gentle surrender, not to defeat, but to the wisdom of the gardener. Trust that He knows the perfect cut, the necessary waiting period, the exact nourishment required. He is shaping you for a harvest of righteousness, for fruit that remains, for a life deeply rooted in Him. Breathe into the discomfort. Allow His skilled hand to do its work. The pruning hurts, yes, but it promises a future heavy with fruit, a testament to the gardener's patient love and perfect plan. You sit in the silence, the weight of the weight pressing down. Days stretch into weeks, weeks into months, perhaps even years. The promise you hold dear seems further away than ever, shrouded in the fog of uncertainty. It's in this deep season of waiting that the whispers of doubt become loudest, convincing you that God has forgotten, that your situation is simply too far gone, too impossible for even divine intervention. The mountain before you feels unscalable, the valley too deep, the wilderness too vast to ever find a way out. You stare at the seemingly impassable barrier, and despair begins to settle like dust on a forgotten lamp. But there is a spiritual discipline, a powerful counter-strategy to the enemy's lie of impossibility. Intentional remembrance. When your present feels devoid of God's action, you must intentionally call to mind His faithfulness throughout history and, crucially, in your own past. Think of the Israelites, hemmed in by the roaring Red Sea on one side and the thundering chariots of Pharaoh's army on the other. Humanly speaking, there was no escape. It was an utterly impossible situation, a dead end marked by salt water and swords. Yet God commanded Moses, and the waters parted, creating a path through the impossible. Then consider Lazarus. 4 days in the tomb, his body already decaying, a situation so beyond human hope, beyond the reach of medicine or mourning. Death held him captive. But Jesus stood at the grave and called his name, and life breathed back into dust. The profound spiritual insight here is breathtakingly simple, yet overwhelmingly powerful. The same God who parted the Red Sea, the same Jesus who called Lazarus from the tomb, is your God today. His power has not diminished with time. His reach is not limited by the impossibility of your circumstances. The God of ancient miracles walks with you in your modern-day struggle. Remembering His past breakthroughs fuels faith for your current waiting season, transforming your perspective from despair to defiant hope. The prophet Jeremiah, writing from a place of profound suffering and loss, found this truth in the depths of his sorrow. Lamentations 3:21-23 offers a powerful reminder, a lifeline in the wait. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. He didn't say, "Look at my circumstances and find hope." He said, "This I call to mind." Hope was not found in the external situation, but in the intentional remembrance of God's enduring character, His steadfast love, His unending mercies, His great faithfulness. When hope feels thin, when the wait feels eternal, make the deliberate choice to call to mind His history of faithfulness. Remember the small victories, the unexpected provisions, the moments He carried you when you thought you couldn't take another step. His mercies are new every morning, even in the wait, a fresh supply of hope poured out just for you. Let the memories of His past acts water the parched ground of your present faith, knowing that the God of the impossible is still on His throne, orchestrating His perfect plan for your life. You sit with the heavy blanket of disappointment draped over your shoulders. Your mind replays the moments you felt overlooked, the opportunities that closed, the future you planned now stalled in uncertain gray. It's so easy, isn't it, to view this season, this delay, this wait as solely your story, a personal narrative centered around your desires unmet, your timeline disrupted, your hopes deferred. The world shrinks down to the size of your ache, the horizon limited by the walls of your present circumstances. You feel like a character waiting in the wings, forgotten while the main act unfolds somewhere else entirely. But lift your gaze, weary soul. Lean closer to the whisper of ancient truth. Scripture reveals a breathtaking panorama, a cosmic tapestry far vaster and more intricate than the confines of your present view. Your life, with its unique rhythms, its quiet struggles, its fervent prayers, it is not a standalone story happening to you in isolation. It is a single, precious thread being woven with divine intention into God's magnificent unfolding narrative of redemption, reconciliation, and the triumphant advance of His kingdom. Your waiting period is not merely about you and your desired outcome. It is a crucial chapter in a story far, far grander than your own. A story that may impact others you've never met, demonstrate God's unwavering power to a watching world, or fulfill a purpose etched into eternity, far beyond your individual understanding in this moment. Think of Joseph, cast into a pit, sold into slavery, unjustly imprisoned. His personal story was saturated with betrayal, loss, and agonizing delay. He waited years, his youthful dreams seemingly crushed. Yet his long, dark wait was not a detour. It was the very path God used to position him, to refine him, ultimately saving his family and countless others from famine. His personal story became critical to God's redemptive plan for Israel, a vital thread in the Messiah's lineage. The profound spiritual insight waiting for you in this quiet place is to dare to see your current season not as a frustrating pause or a lamentable delay of your story, but as a necessary, sacred, crucial chapter in God's story being written through you. The Apostle Paul, speaking to a church finding its identity, declared in Ephesians 2, verse 10, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them." You are God's masterpiece, created and positioned, even in this wait, for his good works. Your season has purpose, meticulously prepared by the divine author within his overarching plan. The great paradox is that sometimes the less you focus on your story progressing, the more clearly you see how beautifully it fits into his. Ask him, quietly now, in the stillness, ask him to show you just a glimpse of how your current chapter fits into his larger, beautiful narrative. It might not erase the pain of waiting, but it can infuse it with profound, eternal meaning. The world spins faster and faster, a relentless current pulling you into the tide of constant action. Productivity is the God worshipped in hushed tones, and the mantra is always more, always faster. To stop feels like failure. To pause feels like falling behind. You see the churning wheels of others' lives, the notifications flashing, the endless stream of demands, and the quiet whisper in your soul cries out, "But what if I just stopped?" Waiting feels not just countercultural, but counterintuitive. Surely, progress requires doing, requires striving, requires pushing against the current, doesn't it? There's a pervasive anxiety that settles when the hands are still, when the mind isn't racing through the next 5 steps, when the body isn't moving towards the next task. It feels like a void, a dangerous emptiness where failure might rush in. You feel the pressure, the unspoken judgment, from the world, from others, sometimes even from your own heart, that if you aren't visibly productive, you aren't valuable. So you hustle, you chase, you fill every space, every moment, because the alternative feels like surrender, but not in the good way. It feels like giving up. But then, a whisper from an ancient text, a divine counter-command that cuts through the noise like a lighthouse beam through fog. "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." Psalm 46:10. It's not a suggestion, it's a command. And nested within that command is a profound, earth-shattering promise. Be still Not be busy, not be productive, not be striving. Just be still. This isn't a call to apathy or passive resignation. This stillness isn't the absence of energy. It's the redirecting of energy. It's an active posture of intentional rest, a deliberate releasing of the oars, a profound reliance not on your own strength, but on the strength of the one who commands the waves. It's in this sacred stillness, this quiet surrender of your relentless doing, that you are invited into a deeper knowing. Not just knowing about God, but truly knowing who He is, sovereign, powerful, completely in control, even when your world feels chaotic. The spiritual insight shimmers in the quiet. True, enduring strength in the waiting, in the wilderness seasons, in the moments of doubt and uncertainty, is found not in your frantic hustle, not in the noise of your efforts, but in your ability to be still. It's in the courageous act of trusting that God is God, that He is actively working, even when you cannot see the movement. It's like standing by a vast river. The water flows, the power is immense, but you, standing on the bank, are still. Your stillness doesn't stop the river. It allows you to simply be in its presence, to witness its power without needing to push it along. In the world's economy, stillness is weakness. In God's kingdom, stillness is a channel for divine power. It's a paradox the world cannot grasp. You gain strength by ceasing to strive. You find your footing by letting go. You know Him most intimately when you stop trying to figure Him out. It is in this quiet surrender of striving that you can finally discern His quiet voice, often drowned out by the clamor of your own thoughts and the world's demands. His peace, not as the world gives, but a supernatural stillness in the soul, begins to settle in the space you create by simply being. And from that place of peace, from that posture of reliance, you find the strength needed to persevere. Not the frantic energy that leads to burnout, but a deep relief, sustaining strength that comes from knowing you are not carrying the weight alone. He is carrying it. He is working. And your role in this profound moment is simply to be still and know that He is God. The anxiety whispers, "But if I stop, everything will fall apart." And faith, born in the quiet heart, responds, "He holds all things together. My stillness doesn't unravel the universe. It allows me to trust the one who upholds it." It's not a call to idleness, but a call to sacred presence. The quiet call to reflection settles like a gentle rain on your soul. Be still. It's that simple, yet it feels like scaling a mountain in a world that demands you sprint across the plains. Create space, not just empty space in your schedule, but sacred space in your heart. Quiet the noise, the anxious thoughts, the what-ifs, the pressure to do. Quiet the striving, the feeling that you have to earn God's favor or force your own progress. And simply be. Be in His presence. Sit with Him. Listen without agenda. Rest without guilt. In that intentional stillness, in that quiet surrender, you will discover a wellspring of strength you never knew was there. It is the strength found only when you cease your own efforts and simply know, deep in your soul, that He is God and He is more than enough. You have walked through the silence, felt the ache of waiting like a stone in your gut, wrestled fiercely with doubt, but felt like a shadow refusing to leave your side. Perhaps, in moments of desperation, you even tried to help God along, weaving your own hurried threads into the tapestry he was patiently creating. You've seen glimpses of his shaping hand, subtle shifts in the landscape of your life that point back to his sovereign touch. You've reached into the past, dredging up memories of his faithfulness, clinging to them like anchors in a turbulent sea. You've lifted your gaze, trying to grasp his higher perspective, acknowledging that his ways are not your ways, his thoughts not your thoughts, a truth often harder to embrace than to simply state. This journey of waiting on God isn't about reaching a mystical destination where waiting ceases to exist, where all questions are answered the moment they arise, and every desire is fulfilled on your timeline. No, the profound beauty of the wait lies not in its end, but in what is discovered within it. It is here, in the liminal space of not yet, that you uncover the true depth of God's unwavering character and the surprising resilience of the faith He has planted within you. Your faith is refined in the fire of delay, forged in the quiet of unanswered prayer. Understand this truth deeply and fundamentally. God's faithfulness is not a conditional response tied to your timeline or the specific outcomes you desire. It is not dependent on your ability to wait patiently or your perfect adherence to some spiritual checklist. God's faithfulness is not a fluctuating emotion or a strategy. It is who He is. It is His very essence, as constant and reliable as the sunrise. His boundless love for you is not diminished in the slightest by the delay you experience. He is not distant, observing your struggle from afar. He is intimately, profoundly present in the quiet corners of your heart, in the raw ache of longing, in the very midst of the struggle that feels like a solitary wilderness. He is closer than your next breath, a steadying presence in the storm of uncertainty that rages around you. Remember the anchor promise given to a people facing future unknowns. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Hebrews 13:5. This isn't a fair weather promise. It holds true not despite, but often especially in the seasons of prolonged waiting, when the world feels like shifting sand beneath your feet. You are not merely enduring the passage of time, gritting your teeth through hardship. You are being held, cradled in the palm of a loving God. You are not forgotten, a lost sheep in a vast pasture. You are deeply seen, known, and profoundly loved with a fierce, unwavering affection. The spiritual conclusion to this journey, this season of learning to wait well, is not necessarily the arrival of the desired answer, but a profound, unshakable peace rooted in His enduring presence. Even in the profound quiet, in the stillness you've slowly learned to embrace, not as emptiness, but as sacred space, lean in closer still. Can you hear it? It's not a booming answer delivered like thunder, not the specific solution you've prayed for with tears. It's a quiet melody, a soft, persistent hum that transcends the silence. Even in the deepest stillness, His presence sings over you. It is a lullaby of love, soothing the anxieties that claw at your spirit. It is a symphony of promise, resonating with the truth of who He is and whose you are. It whispers, not always audibly to the ear, but certainly to the soul, I am with you. You are safe. You are mine. Rest in that truth. Let it permeate the weary places within you. The wait, however long it feels, however challenging it proves, is temporary. His love is not. His love is eternal, a constant current beneath the surface of your ever-changing circumstances. They didn't see the end, but they trusted the author, and that was enough.